Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, over the past weeks, we have seen Democrats continue to use one delaying tactic after another on the floor of the United States Senate. They have tried to slow down the confirmation of many of the administration's most important nominees. We have seen it time and again. We have seen it in agencies all across the government, including right now the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. Democrats are just wasting time, and they're doing it intentionally. They aren't protecting our environment, not one bit. They are not safeguarding the health of the American people, not at all. Government agencies like the EPA, and one after another, need their leadership in place, and they need it in place now. What they don't need, what the American people don't need, is more political theater from the Senate Democrats. Now, we've heard a lot about Scott Pruitt's nomination to be administrator of the EPA. Much of what we heard from our colleagues on the other side of the aisle has simply not been true. I want to set the record straight, Mr. President. As head of the EPA, Scott Pruitt will protect the environment. During his 6 years as Attorney General for the state of Oklahoma, Mr. Pruitt has stood up to polluters. He has worked across state lines, and he's worked across party lines. He's done it to lower phosphorus levels in the Illinois River. He actually negotiated a water rights settlement with Oklahoma tribes. Why? Well, to preserve scenic lakes and rivers. He used common sense policies. He used them to protect the environment in Oklahoma, and he will follow common sense policies at the Environmental Protection Agency. Mr. President, the delays that we have seen by Democrats have never actually been about Mr. Pruitt or his record or the answers that he has given to questions about his qualifications. He's answered over 1,200 questions. He's answered 4 rounds of questions in committee, went for 6.5 hours. Members of the other side had said these were very fair hearings. Mr. President, these delays are all about obstruction. They're all about denying President Trump his cabinet. That's what this is all about. It's about pretending that their candidate, Hillary Clinton, didn't lose the election in November. That's what this is all about. Now, we have seen them use the same tactics from one cabinet nominee after another. As the cabinet nominees were named, what we saw was a list of 8 nominees come out that Senator Schumer had as his hit list of nominees that he was going to oppose, slow down, obstruct, boycott. Democrats delayed. They delayed again. They delayed again. That's what we saw in one after another after another. When Scott Pruitt is confirmed today, he will take office later than any incoming EPA administrator for any new administration going back to the 1980s. Our friends on the other side of the aisle, they need to recognize that the terrible precedent that they are setting today with all of these relentless and needless delays will continue then into the future. It's a precedent just like the precedent that Harry Reid set when he changed the law, the rules of the Senate, by breaking the rules. The Democrats need to see how their actions will continue to play forward, will affect the confirmation process for all future administrations, including Democratic administrations. The American people want someone in place to run these important departments. And what we see from the Democrats is political theater on the floor of the United States Senate. President Trump deserves to have his team in place. President Trump deserves to have his cabinet in place. The cabinet nominees deserve an up or down vote from the Senate on the floor of the Senate, and that's what we're going to do today with Attorney General Scott Pruitt, who is qualified and who has been nominated to be the administrator of the EPA.
Mr. President.
Scott Pruitt will protect our environment. He will protect the health of all Americans. He is the right
Would the senator
person
yield
the
for a
job.
question?
Does the senator yield for a question?
At the end of your remarks.
At the end of my remarks, I will yield for a question. So I say to you, Mr. President, as I come here to the floor, I chaired the committee in the Environment and Public Works Committee on Scott Pruitt's nomination. I listened to 6.5 hours of testimony. I listened and read through responses that he gave to 1,200 questions being asked of him. He gave thorough answers, perhaps not the answers that the Democrats wanted to hear, but answers that I felt were responsive. So I come to the floor to urge all of my colleagues to support Mr. Pruitt's nomination to be the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. He is a nominee who, as Attorney General in Oklahoma, protected the environment, worked to strengthen the economy, and stood up for states' rights, which continues to be most crucial. And with that, Mr. President, I would yield for